I'm WG, NARJA is here, and we just spent around the last 7.5 hours extensively testing her, and in this video you get the full extensive breakdown of how she works, which epiphanies to go for, which gear to go for, where to farm her, which gear set, which partner, which potential, and everything like that. So, for NARJA herself, before we get into anything more specific, let's talk about, do you need her? How good is she? And yeah, similar-esque questions. So overall, how good is she? She is probably by far the best chaos support we have available as of this moment. That is not just because of the fact that she brings incredible healing and a multitude of buffs to the table as well as damage herself. No, it is also because of, at the end of the day, copy farming, right? If you want to build perfect decks, then you want a lot of copies for specific cards. The way you can ensure that is by having the other cards in your 3-man team be unique cards. Unique cards are unable to be copied, meaning they also never pop up as copy options. So you have one unique Mealtime, you have a unique Epiphany for when you're not building her on Domain of Veracity, you have 2 different unique Epiphanies for on the voluntary control, so a very high chance of that actually becoming unique, and then the Bottomless Hunger itself also has a unique card, meaning that if everything goes accordingly, you can have up to 4 out of her 5 epiphanyable or copyable cards actually being unique, meaning you'd only have to, for example, sell a singular card, only spend 80 credits while keeping her power intact and ensuring that her cards do not become copy targets. So that's just her in terms of like a, yeah, support. But overall, she can pretty much work together with everybody. We obviously talk about teams as well. But yeah, if you have the summons, she is really good. She is absolutely worth your summons, but that doesn't mean she's a must summon, and that's just simply due to the fact that she's a standard unit, meaning after this 20 days and 11 hours after they are up, she just moves into the standard pool and you'll be able to get her on a 50-50 failure or from the normal combatant banner. Important here as well, if you can, do hold on to your rescue anchors until in 3 weeks, because if you do so, then yeah, the pool is going to become better. It is only going to be a plus for you with NARJA moving into the pool, because she just elevates the quality of the pool and gives you a chance to potentially get her there as well. So if you can, hold on for your rescue anchors for another 3 weeks. Now, Gaia, on the other hand, will also more specifically dive into the partners, but if you wanted to skip something, you can absolutely skip Gaia. She is the best in slot partner, but she is by no means necessary, nor does she do anything super crazy or unique, which would justify you having to go out of your way like crazy just to make sure you get her. So the easiest, and my recommendation as of this moment, is just get yourself a singular NARJA and you're done. That's the easiest, that's the most straightforward way, and that's what I'd probably recommend for most of you. But then again, we'll break down all these other specific topics starting now. So before we get into the epiphanies and anything more specific, you need to understand how she works. And for that, we need to figure out veracity and predation. You can tell that you have these stacks by looking at the character in the top left, looking below her status or stress bar, and you see this little whale icon with the stacks 4, meaning we currently have 4 stacks of veracity. Veracity comes in this case from us drawing into the Shackles of Hunger and the attunement effect activating based on the card being drawn, regardless of how. So, veracity itself says then whenever you hit with any attack card, could be her, could be the whole team, you trigger first a 40% fixed heal based on NARJA's defense, and if your health is higher than 50%, so in this case higher than what, 750, then you also increase the damage amount of that card by plus 30%, meaning if it, for example, were to deal 100% damage, now it deals 130%. What is also important is that it is on a per hit basis, meaning that if you play a card that hits 3 times, you also consume 3 veracity stacks for a 3 times 40% heal, and to increase the damage of all 3 hits by 30%. So that's 3 stacks, as well as also if you use an AoE attack, that AoE attack also consumes stacks based on how many targets it hit. So if there's 5 targets you play an AoE attack, it costs 5 veracity, 200% heal, and 5 hits getting the 30% damage bonus. So that itself is veracity right here. And then we're just going to quickly draw ourselves some cards. You saw we draw into another Shackles of Hunger, giving us more veracity. And now we use the card, we do 3 attacks, you see 3 numbers pop up, 3 stacks reduce themselves, and what now also happened is Mealtime reducing itself in cost. And that is every time veracity is decreased, you decrease the cost of this card by 1. What we're going to do is now we're going to be playing out this card to get ourselves stack number 2. And that is, if you now take a look at our whale in the top left, you see the whale now has teeth. And that is due to it now also showing us that we have in fact predation stacks. What you know is we actually have 4 predation stacks, but only 3 veracity stacks, showing us 3 whale stacks. So why is that? That is because for predation to come into effect, you need to have a veracity stack. So predation is kind of like a buff for your next veracity stack usage. So what predation does is in this case give us an additional 100% damage amount on the same per hit / per target hit for AoE basis, meaning that our next 3 hits, for example right here of Shackles of Hunger, are actually going to get boosted not only by veracity but also by predation, giving it 130% extra damage per hit. So those were the basics of a kit. Now let's get into the specifics. So before we move on to the Epiphanies, we actually need to talk about Mealtime first. Mealtime being a retain / unique card, meaning you cannot duplicate it, and having the effect of a veracity stack getting decreased, it reducing its cost. The important part here is also it's until used. The cost reduction obviously only can happen 6 times. Technically, but if something were to increase this card's cost, you could again still reduce it by consuming veracity stacks. And if you consume 10 veracity stacks, this card itself gains 300% additional healing, making it 408% in our case of our current multipliers. What it also does is defense-based damage to all enemies, and it grants you the 4 predation stacks. Then we have ourselves the ultimate. The ultimate gives you 10 veracity stacks, does a 250% defense based damage, and if Mealtime is in your graveyard, meaning you played it this turn, or you played it on a earlier turn and it hasn't moved into your draw pile yet, you get a further 5 predation, meaning that if, for example, you play Mealtime, you get 4 predation, then you play veracity to get, you play Predator's hunting method to get 10 veracity and 5 predation, meaning your next 9 hits are going to get the full 130% damage bonus. So that is the ult and Mealtime. So for our first part, we'll be going through every single one of the Epiphanies, as well as also explaining a bit of the rating system and what you see here. And after that, I'll be giving you specific Epiphany combinations for certain build types that you could strive to achieve on your NARJA. So, simply speaking, these are tiers. The lower the number, the better. Think of it like tier 0, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and the like. And if it says copy, that means that if you have the chance, one of these cards could be the one that you want to copy with your, copy action during the fight. So, let's start with the Shackles of Hunger and the first version, which gives you a 4-hitter and 6 veracity. The reason why this is so good is because it is one of the best ways to gain veracity stacks in the first place, and that is you don't even have to play the card, you just have to draw the card and you can get yourself 6 veracity stacks. You could also potentially through different cards and card effects put it back into your deck and then draw it again to trigger the attunement effect one more time. And the card itself also has a tech count of 4, meaning that you'll be able to consume 4 veracity stacks to also potentially give you some healing, or obviously deal some extra or even rather impressive damage. And then we have ourselves the Shackles of Hunger. Now, Shackles of Hunger at its version deals 36% defense-based damage times 2, and then at the start of the turn, if Veracity was triggered 3 times or more in the last turn, so you had 3 stacks, you used a 3-hitter, it will move to your hand, meaning that starting from turn 1 or onwards, you'll always get this back into your hand, which could become helpful in terms like building consistency or the like. But what I don't really like about this one is it only gives you a singular Veracity instead of 6, for example, here in comparison. So the Veracity amount gained is way lower, even though the consistency is definitely higher in it coming back to your hand. Furthermore, you also have a, you only have half the hits, for example, in comparison to the other one. There is some interesting stuff you could do with this, like for example giving it a Divine Epiphany, and then you'd always be able to get that back to your hand, meaning you'll be able to play it once, but at that point you might as well just get a homing laser with a Divine Epiphany. Serenion's card, if you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, then for the next one we have a increase in the base damage, and furthermore a hit addition for each Veracity owned, meaning that or for each 4 Veracity owned, meaning the moment you have 12 Veracity, this goes from a simple 3-hitter to a 6-hitter, making it a, yeah, honestly really good single target damage ability, you could say. And then here we have the Shackles of Hunger, which is a retain card that says you decrease your current maximum velocity amount by 5. So if you, for example, have 4, it goes down to 0. If you have 7, it goes down to 2. Per Veracity consumed, you add 40% of a 40% damage amount to the next used attack card. And also, if you did consume 5, you also generate 3 predation stacks. What that means is that this card is incredibly good at boosting single target damage. A singular hit, like for example a Haru hit, or anything that, you know, does a big boom at once. And that is because the next attack card used is going to have the benefit of Veracity stacks themselves being 30%, the benefit of predation stacks being 100%, making it 130%, and then an additional 200% on top from you consuming 5 of these Veracity stacks, meaning that overall you have around a, I think, 16 morale count or 15 and a half morale worth of damage bonus just by consuming 5 stacks of Veracity. Important here though, you need Veracity to consume Veracity, so this card might go well with, for example, copying Shackles of Hunger before you Epiphany it, or looking for more Veracity heavy Epiphanies in your other cards. And then here we have ourselves a 0 cost 72% shield. Doesn't sound too impressive on its own, but you decrease your Veracity by up to 3, and based on how much you decreased it, you repeat this card multiple times, meaning that this card can consume 3 Veracity and can be used up to 4 times, giving you at base, without any additional shield multipliers, a shield worth 280%, which is pretty darn beefy, especially on a character that already wants to build defense just solely for defense-based damage or healing purposes. So that's also why there's like a mere question mark, and that is because this card might just be able to trigger 4 metalizations of Emir in a row, opening up some very interesting Emir possibilities. Then down here in the first one we have our first tier 0 card, and that is the Bottomless Hunger, where the only thing that changes is you gain 3 Veracity by playing the card, and the next 2 times Veracity is activated, you decrease the cost of 2 random cards by 1. You cannot reduce the cost of a card of 0 further, meaning that it's always going to hit a card that costs any amount of AP. So effectively what this means is you pay nothing for the card, and you use a attack card that, let's say, attacks twice, and you get a payback of 2 AP, so this card is pretty much 2 AP positive, and it also generates the Veracity necessary to even trigger the effect in the first place. Where then we have a slightly different version that does not provide any Veracity, that just naturally decreases the cost of 2 random cards in hand by 1 for 1 turn. And the important part here though is, if you use this card the effect gets instantly applied. The Bottomless Hunger, for example, could be played in the turn before and can be stacked as many times as you can until you then start consuming Veracity stacks, where you then use up the stacks to generate the AP, where this is like fixed on your current hand and also on a turn basis. Bottomless Hunger, you can see already 2.5, and that is, it's obviously great if you're deck farming for somebody else because it's unique, but what it says is that when Veracity is activated 3 times in one turn, you decrease the cost of one random card in hand by 1 until used, but at a turn limit of once per turn, meaning you pay 1 AP to get the card set up, then at least you have it as a permanent effect, but you'll only be able to trigger it, let's say 5 times in 5 turns, giving you 5 AP, where, for example, here, even with just a singular Bottomless Hunger, you'd be able to get yourself 2 AP the first time, and then if you, for example, draw it 3 times in 5 turns, you'd already have gained 8 AP from that, and you also didn't have to pay a singular AP to make it work. And also you cannot clone the Bottomless Hunger, whereas if you clone this card, you gain some value out of it. So it's an okay card. It could also give you some more consistency in terms of AP generation. But I'd only pick it up, only ever pick it up if for some reason you copy Bottomless Hunger before it Epiphanies, and then you could select both the unique and a different card. Then we have another tier 0, and that is because this card right here is pretty straightforward and pretty darn good. What this does is it team-wide buffs defense-based damage by plus 100%. So for any defense-based damage dealt, you just add 5 morale at 0 cost. That could also get Godly Epiphanies anywhere from 1 AP to 1 draw to whatever, right? So that's those are the options there as well. And also it has retain, so you can hold on to this as long as you need for that perfect defense-based damage turn. And the important part here is as well, she is defense-based damage, so she buffs herself. Do let me tell you a secret though that the devs don't know about yet. If you want to abuse this card for now, there is currently a bug in the game where if you play out this version of Bottomless Hunger and you have Veracity stacks at any point in time, you can consume a Veracity stack to gain both the healing and a equivalent shield. It's a bit more of a gimmick, it's a little silly, but yeah, it can help you shield generate, even though it shouldn't, right? That's just, again, you know, we had it with Shizuru, we had it with Serenia, we're kind of used to it by now, right? But then for the last one right here, we have the lead version, meaning that it has a 50% chance that if you draw it, it reduces its cost, and then so long as you play it as the first card in the turn, it will also then stay a 0 card cost. What it does is it gives you 7 Veracity, and now for 1 turn, each time Veracity is activated, you add 40% damage amount to the next Mealtime. So that could mean that if, for example, you play out these 7 Veracity, you have a 7 hit opportunity, you add 7 times 40% damage to the next Mealtime, or if you think of it in morale stacks, you boost the next Mealtime by 14 stacks of morale. So that's where this could come in as being pretty sweet, which is also why it got rated with a 1. Now, how important that really ends up being remains to be seen, because Mealtime itself, it's only until you use the next Mealtime, and you can't clone a Mealtime, so you'll only ever be able to have 1. So that then brings us to these next few epiphanies, where we have voluntary control that says if your veracity is lower than 6, you gain 9, but if you have 6 or more, you gain 3 predation instead. So if you, for example, have 7 veracity, you could play a 2-hitter or 2 cards, go to 5 and then go back up to 15 if you want to get rid or use a massive amount of veracity. Like, for example, with this damage boosting card in the bottom left, or you want to get some more veracity to be reduced through Shackles of Hunger, the retain card. Or you just want to take it that step further, and if you have 6 or more stacks already because you generate a bunch of veracity from elsewhere or other voluntary controls, you can gain yourself 3 stacks of the 100% damage bonus, which honestly is pretty darn good, all things considered. This is also one of those things that could be a potential copy target for you, because of the fact that, yeah, it just even works with itself. Then we have voluntary control. If mealtime is in the draw pile, move it to your hand. If in the graveyard, you gain 3 morale for 1 turn. So it is a free 3 morale at 0 cost, which could also further Epiphany to give you even more morale. Or it is a guaranteed card draw for mealtime, so long as it moves from the graveyard to your draw pile, or it starts in your draw pile. I'm still not entirely sure about the value here, but 3 morale, regardless of how you get it, is pretty good. If you, for example, think about Ray. Ray has to pay 1 AP to give you 4 morale. Here you pay nothing to get 3. Then next up we have for 2 turns, each time the action count of whatever target you select with this skill, you gain 1 veracity. So the higher the starting target action count of the enemy you're facing, the more value this is. So if, for example, the enemy has like a starting count of 12 every turn, this could be 12 veracity per turn. And also it's on a 2-turn basis, meaning you'd only have to play it once. So depending on what you're facing, this can be incredibly clutch. Now, here we have some crazy ones, and you know what? I'm actually going to rank up this one real quick. Just in terms of like overall value. Let's actually start with this one and let's explain the reason why. So, this is another way to boost the damage of basic attack cards. You can combine that, for example, with the basic attack card damage bonus of Ray to send basic attacks to the moon. Now, if you're wondering for who, obviously for either Shizuru or Mei Lin with their basic attack focused decks. What you can also get here is this effect, which is pretty powerful. Every time a basic attack card inflicts a hit, you gain 1 veracity. This is also relevant due to Shizuru's basics dealing 2 hits, or even Mei Lin so long as you use the ultimate. And that means that no matter what, basic attacks can never reduce the amount of veracity you have. So if through any source you gain a veracity, you'll never drop below that number if you use basic attacks. Or the basic attacks can generate veracity themselves from nothing by doing the first hit to gain 1 veracity, and then that one pretty much stays permanently. Really, really good value, really consistent, and a big damage boost. And then right here we have voluntary control, which is another unique, again good for farming. You get 10 veracity stacks, and you can select a singular attack card, and every time this card moves to your hand, you gain 1 predation each time, meaning that you would increase the hit of the next attack card by 100%. Characters that instantly come to mind that you could make use of here are, for example, somebody like Serenial, whose specific homing laser that you could target comes back quite often, or Mei Lin's basic attack, which Mei Lin's basic strike, which could come back quite often per turn, which you could then combine this voluntary control with the other one. Or somebody else that could work is Rin. You could use Rin to give it to either her Blade Storm, or you know the cards, right? Either the 6-hitter or the 2 to up to 4-hitter for her, and then have the ability to move it back to your hand from the graveyard with the skill card, meaning that you'd be able to play it out more times again, making this a decent option for characters that have the ability to play the same card multiple times a turn, which obviously doesn't work if you select like an exhaust card, because it then exhausts itself and then it's gone, right? So those were the voluntary controls, and then we have ourselves the domain of veracity. So the first one is just an upgrade to the base version, where you still get the 100% multiplier to all tenacity damage taken by the target, which can be your opportunity to use other characters with the Ravage set, or just to ravage enemies in general more reliably to get the AP, to get the action count increased by 1 for the enemy, while not having to rely on Serenial, or even take Serenial's break damage even further. And then also as a bonus, the moment that target then gets broken, or in this case actually any target, because it's AoE applying, any target gets broken, of those you get yourself 3 veracity. This whole thing works until the next Ravage, meaning that it isn't turn limited, so even if on the first turn or even the second turn you can't break yet, you still retain the bonus. This card is a banger. Like, I haven't been able to get this card a singular time yet, but 120% AoE damage to all enemies, and then for 2 turns at 1 cost, you get 100% defense-based damage taken by the target. So it's pretty much a AoE debuff to the enemies that makes them take an additional 100% defense-based damage. This card is awesome, right? Especially if you can get yourself the perfect deck of something like a Bottomless Hunger Retain for the 100% combined with the 100% for the enemies from this Domain of Veracity, which then either works for her as a DPS or as kind of like a supportive damage boosting DPS for others. Then here we have a bit of more of a funky card, and that it deals 180% damage to all enemies, and when you hit the target for the next 5 times, you heal for 40%, going up to 200%, meaning that this is kind of like the card that if you really just wanted to have her to be solely a healer, or you just need massive heal numbers for whatever reason. With then here the 3 cost card Retain that deals 384% damage to all enemies. If this card itself, upon you playing it, has both a Veracity and a Predation stack to consume, it will trigger once again, doubling the damage. So that means that turns this into a 2-hitter at 384% each. And also because it's not a 2-hitter but a double card activation, any effects to do with card triggerings or the like, as well as also any divine epiphanies that you could have on this card, are getting triggered a second time. So anything that gets caused by an attack card being played would then happen twice. So that is the Domain of Veracity with some incredible AoE damage. And then right here we have again a bit more of a weird one, and that is the Domain of Veracity upgrade, which again unique, perfect for farming, but otherwise each time Mealtime is used, heal 200%. The big issue here with that is you will at most only ever be able to use Mealtime a singular time a turn, so this is definitely limited in what it does, but can then again also lead into that potential heal build or massive heal build if that is what you're looking for. So these were all the epiphanies. Now let's go into some more specific epiphany combinations for certain playstyles. Now for a more comprehensive builds section, we start off with the defensive build. The defensive build, the main 2 focuses are the 100% increased defense damage taken by the target and the 100% defense based damage dealt, which works for the entire team, and whoever it is you want to boost in terms of defense based damage, that's where you get it from. Then we also have the ability to gain Veracity in massive amounts or even Predation to further increase the damage, and the same is true for the Shackles of Hunger with the damage increases there. Depending on how big your deck is and how fast you cycle through it, you might want multiple copies of the defense increase, but if you can guarantee to play it every single turn once per turn, you do not need multiple because it doesn't stack the damage bonus, it only stacks the per turn. The same would be true here, but at a 4-2 turns, so long as you can get it every second turn, you have the 100% uptime. And then voluntary control, obviously this is like the best base version, but you could also just swap it around. This is kind of like a bit more of a recommendation. Where then next we have your general support. So as a general support, we want the 6 Veracity that we get from attuning the card, or even something like a standard epiphany where we get 4 Veracity but a 2 morale for 1 turn so long as we play out the card, combined with the Bottomless Hunger with either the 1 morale basic epiphany, a 1 morale basic and potentially something like 1 draw 1 AP, or just a standard decreased cost of 2 random cards in hand by 1 for 1 turn, or just as well something like this, the 3 veracity, the next 2 times veracity is used, cost reduction. So that's kind of like the bottomless hunger section, where then here for the domain of veracity, you just go for the increased tenacity damage taken, being effective for every singular team, and also helping you a bit with AP gen, so long as you break the target, as well as it also being AoE and providing a damage buff the moment you do break a target. With then the voluntary control definitely be a bit more open-ended, with the most optimal one probably being the 6-9 and the 6-3 stacks. I guess that's just what I'm going to refer to it from now. And then you also have the ability to, for example, just give yourself 3 morale through the mealtime draw, or not draw, I guess, or based on action count, get veracity through enemy action count, or just if you have a card that is getting put into your hand 2 to 3 times a turn, then getting the predation upgrade could be exactly in your favor and what you should be looking out forward and what you should be doing. Then we have the basic attacker buffer build, where we again start with the Shackles of Hunger to get us as much veracity as possible, as well as on the bottomless hunger, where we can then also potentially look for ways to convert veracity into predation, or just as a general, like damage increase. You obviously don't need as many of these veracity amounts, so these ones are a bit more just suggestions, because they're generally good. You don't necessarily need to go for them, but it ensures that for when you use cards that are not basic attacks, you still have damage boost for them and you don't like tap out on veracity. And that is because at least for basic attacks you get the full damage bonus and you get a 1 veracity. And if we ever get a defense damage based basic attacker build going for another character in the future, then this card plus the double defensive bonuses is going to absolutely shred. But then again, for bottomless hunger and Shackles of Hunger, you have the most freedom. The most important part really here is just the voluntary control and potentially the extra ravage for the AP gen and the like. And then we have the straight up, I don't want to play support, give me a DPS build, including the Shackles of Hunger, which can get up to a 6-hitter, so long as you then have the 12 stacks of veracity, combined with the defense increase, or the potential, or even if you duplicate it before your Epiphany, to run both of them, being the defense increase and also 7 veracity, plus if you consume however many veracity you end up consuming, you buff Mealtime, which Mealtime is then going to be like your big time finisher at 0 cost, plus however much damage or veracity you can put together, combined with then also the increased defense damage taken, so that the Shackles of Hunger themselves are going to become the most powerful, with then for example just a standard voluntary control, so we can grant veracity and potentially predation to Shackles of Hunger, so we can meet the 12 veracity owned condition. What you can then also do here, for example, if you really want to push that DPS up, is get multiple dupes of Shackles of Hunger, or potentially figure out a way to get multiple stacks of veracity to just fully invest into Mealtime, with then the last one being a bit more of a meme-ish build, but it is the healer. So the only thing we're really focusing on the left side is you can see either just more veracity, so that we have more stacks we can consume for healing, or the ability to consume 3 veracity to trigger a big shield that then can also obviously divine epiphanies, yada yada. The interesting question here is this card repeating itself, right? Because if it does, then that would open up, for example, the possibility of getting like a 1 draw divine on this card, sacrificing 3 veracity to draw 3. So that's something we have to check. Or does it really just give the shield? Because it says repeat for each rather than activate again, right? So that's just a bit of a theory. You can let me know down in the comments below if you know if it does or doesn't work, right? And then here ourselves, we have just again a bit of veracity, bit of cost reduction. Here just some more veracity stacks to get the ability to reduce those veracity stacks to heal. And then here you need to duplicate the domain of veracity before it epiphany, so that you can have both the confirm a target and when hitting the target 5 times heal, combined with the 200% heal when you use Mealtime, where then your copy target would be the domain of veracity, where you could then just heal an incredible amount, right? So that would be a bit more of a like meme-esque build, but if you're looking for the craziest healing in the realm, that is probably the way to go. So now that we understand everything in regards to builds, how her kit works and the like, let's talk about her partner. And for the partner, you have 4 options. It goes Gaia, Alyssa, Nyx, and then Yvonne. Overall, Gaia is going to be the best in slot, and that is also for a particular reason, but it depends on how much you care about it, and that is this right here. When you use a unique attack card, which in this case describes Mealtime, the moment you use Mealtime, you get a permanent, for the whole duration of the fight, plus 20% additional damage bonus to all allies. That also includes NARJA herself. So that is what kind of like sets her apart. So if you also care about further boosting the damage of your entire team, that is kind of where it's at. Whereas then you also for NARJA herself get an 8% damage bonus, 8% defense bonus, and then a 20% defense based damage amount bonus, right? But then we have Alyssa. Now, Alyssa isn't actually all that far behind, and that is because Alyssa herself actually has a, comparatively rather crazy 24% defense increase. So simple, straightforward, big stats, big multiplier. That's Alyssa. And the important part here is because she's a defense-based damage dealer, this boosts her defense, this boosts her shields, this boosts her healing. It just doesn't boost the team, right? That's like the only difference here. Whereas then you also get a further HP recovery at the end of the battle, meaning that in Chaos you can become even more survivable or, capable of surviving, as well as also you could heal yourself, gain some morale, or even get a bigger heal when you're below health. Whereas on Gaia, on the other hand, you're a bit more in that damage direction, where you get an additional 4-hitter at 60%, which can also trigger the veracity stacks for the healing, but you can then also draw yourself an attack card, which could again, for example, if it has attunement, give you more veracity, or just overall end up being more damage, or can help you deck search for specific cards you're looking for. So that's kind of the difference between the two. And then on the other hand, we have ourselves Nyx. Now, Nyx is ranked a little lower, and that is just due to the fact that increases the assigned combatant's health and heal amount. So instead of boosting defense, it boosts health and heal amount. The question is, how exactly do these multipliers end up? And also when the assigned combatant draws for the first time, meaning that you either have to use the ego skill or you have to put cards from the outside in, or get something like a godly epiphany to allow you to draw to trigger this, you at least still get an 8% damage bonus to all allies, as well as also the quality of life of being able to discard 3 and then draw up to 4 cards, depending on how many cards you've discarded. So Nyx, again, still also an absolutely solid choice. You do not have to run Alyssa. And then Yvonne is kind of like you're just starting out, you don't have a copy of anyone really. And you just increase the combatant's defense, you get the extra heal at the end of the turn, and you get a bit of fortitude. Though at least when you bring her to max copies with a 16% damage defense bonus, she really isn't anything to sneeze at least. Now on to potential, because that always seems to be something that a lot of you are very interested in, and that is obviously you want to go all the way through here, make sure you get every single one of these potentials, so you make your way here. This is by far her most important one, and that is because it makes every single veracity stack 10% more viable and valuable, and every single predation stack 20% more valuable, so long as you get a defense of 300, which really isn't that hard to do. Once again, skip out on this. This is not worth your time. This is not worth it. You do not need this. Ignore this. Way too many resources for barely any gain. Then the important trio are going to be between crit chance, defense, and unique cards. The one that's the most all-round competitive or all-round effective is going to be the percentage defense increase, because it further boosts the healing, it boosts the damage, it pretty much boosts everything across the board. So that could be what you go for first. Then crit chance, only if you want to take her into a DPS route, or you're lacking some DPS, or even want a bit more of that sub DPS, then you can end up maxing out the crit chance. Whereas here you like the left two most ones are for the most part only really relevant if you're looking to do a bunch of DPS, because you're getting most of your healing just from the card itself. Quality doesn't really make a difference, and all the other cards, if they do get upgraded, really only increase their damage multipliers. So that is potential. Alright, now for gear sets. So for NARJA, there's kind of like, you could say, 3 things that really come to mind. And that is going to be the Ravage 4-piece plus defense / crit damage combination, which is also what I am currently running, which is especially effective if you're using the increased Ravage damage taken card, or even if you're running her with Serenial, because she is an instinct unit, it's a damage bonus, you don't have to do anything for this, it activates, and crit damage is just the strongest 2-set in the entire game. So you would preferably go for, especially if you're looking for more of that damage direction, go for the 4-piece with crit damage. If you're looking for a bit more of that healing / a bit of a mixed option, you then go for the 4-piece Ravage with the defense. Then we also have another option that is honestly about equal, and that is the super all-rounder, where you go for defense, crit damage, and the basic set. You have 3 sets, 3 set boni, you get the increased healing from the basics, you get the increased damage from the defense, and you get the increased damage from the crit damage, right? So that is by no means a bad set, and can probably rival this set depending on how your team combination looks and how often you break, and also how often do you use her against broken targets. And then here, as like the just healer option, you would go for max HP, defense, and then just the basic heals, where you would really forego a bit more of that idea of her even dealing damage. Now, let's just quickly get the just healer one out of the way, because it's definitely different from what you would usually build, and that is you would go for defense, health, and health, right? If you're just looking for someone tanky, someone chunky, someone as like a pure support, you don't care about the damage one bit, she needs to do AP, she needs to heal, that's the way you do it, right? You go defense, HP, and HP. But yeah, the way most of you will build her is going to be defense %, instinct damage for the multiplier to all her damage, and then crit chance. So crit chance itself, just the most valuable main stat, it's the most valuable piece, and that's why we obviously have crit chance. Instinct damage, just self-explanatory. Defense, same as well, because it boosts her healing, it boosts her damage, and everything like that. Now, the target chase substats are going to be in order: defense flat, crit chance, crit damage, defense %. Those are the things you're going to chase, and the reason why is because you really don't have a lot of defense in terms of value. If you look at your character has 400 attack, 345 health, but only 213 defense, meaning that if you, for example, gain a 1% defense bonus, that is only 2 defense. But if you, for example, get 4 flat defense, that's equivalent to, let's say, 2% defense bonus. So you just gain more value out of defense flat as a stat as a whole, and also it's more value than, for example, the defense percentage equivalent. And then crit chance and crit damage are kind of self-explanatory, just to like boost up your damage. So yeah, that's pretty much then just that. And for those of you that are always a bit curious, these are my current final stats at 53.1, which goes up to 59.1% in crit chance and 189.9 in crit damage on 346 defense, with her being maxed out there, but at least we still have a 1 upgrade here and the potential to get that up a bit higher. So that was gear. Alright, we already briefly discussed it at the beginning, but let's do a bit more of a deep dive on the ego skills and what I think is and isn't worth it. So overall, this increasing the predation by 2 of Mealtime takes it from your next 4 attacks deal 100% extra damage to your next 6 attacks deal 100% extra damage. It is, for the most part, by all intents and purposes, irrelevant. It's not really going to change the game. It is okay, it is decent. It is sweet, but it is nothing you actually have to chase actively or use your summons for. So if it's between E0 or going to E1, just stay at E0. On the other hand, E2 has the, when veracity decreases, you have a 25% chance to retain the stack, meaning that if you have, for example, 20 veracity, it's technically equal to 25 of them, because you'll on average be able to like retain 5 of them. It's a good way to get away with building a deck that has less veracity and still play it as if it had more. And overall, it's just going to be a more reliable damage bonus, but it's not so big that you absolutely have to go for the E2. So again, between E0 and E2, just stay on E0. E3, on the other hand, the ult giving you 8 predation instead of 5 predation if it's in the mealtime. It's similar to the E1. It really doesn't change much, especially because most of the time you don't play the ult. On the other hand, here, you see how we gain more predation from the E1, more from the E3. Now also on the E4 you get a further 30% damage amount to predation, taking it from a 100% damage bonus with potential to 130. If you really go that far, then you get rewarded, right? So if it's between E0 and E4, if you have the means, if you have the intent, then sure, by all means, go at it. The only thing though is, keep in mind she's a standard unit and you'll be able to get that at any point in time. And there is no need to rush for this. It still isn't super cracked. This right here, just a flat out 6% multiplier to any card she owns or has in her deck. And then the E6 itself, that at the end of the turn you deal 50% defense-based damage to random enemies and heal 1 health for each predation decrease this turn. You can really kind of see this theme of the ultimate just mainly focusing on finding ways or means to make predation even stronger. So if, for example, through however you make it happen, you can, let's say, use up 10 predation in a turn, there would be 10 instances of 50% defense-based damage and a 10% heal. Something that we have to get confirmed by the Mega Whales though, or the ones that have it, is does this defense percent damage always stay the same? Is it fixed, or does it get increased even by her own cards? Like, for example, the increased defense-based damage taken. This one right here, because that would, for example, turn 10 hits of 50 into 10 hits of 150. Or obviously same is true for then the retained version right here. But even then, even if that's the case, it still ain't fucking worth it. So that is Manifest Egos for her. Alright, yeah, so now what do we do with NARJA? How do you pair her up? How do you get the most out of her? So, NARJA's best teammate by all means is going to be Chaonica. Huh? Chaonica is by all means NARJA's best teammate. All jokes aside though, NARJA Serenial is a match made in heaven, and then adding either Caleb or Veronica can just take this team into incredible stratospheres of disgustingness. Also, if you're looking to like build the best Serenial deck, or even if you're looking to like build the best deck in general, the combination of NARJA Veronica has an incredible amount of unique cards between the two of them. And if you have the two of them, you can just put an X unit that you just want to build between the two, and then that unit is going to get the best build possible. Also, if you're wondering why the hell is the sound cutting out, it's the devs implementing the feature that if I tap out, it stops the sound. So it might get a bit annoying, but yeah, no. In general though, this is my favorite team or team combination between these four, with NARJA Serenial Veronica or NARJA Serenial Caleb, especially on the Instinct planet, absolutely disgusting. And then other units that are definitely going to be in favor are, for example, Chizuru, in that Chizuru has the Bound at Dusk, which reduces AP. The cards from NARJA herself reduce the AP cost instead of granting AP, so they work together, combined with also the ability to, for example, build a basic attack Chizuru and a basic attack buffing Serenial, or obviously the one who should be your real target when you're looking at a basic attack build is going to be Mei Lin, where Mei Lin can then get, all the laurels, all the buffs from there, whereas then also everybody else in general can just be replaced. You could replace these two with any of these, more support-esque or defense-focused / tanky characters, because the healing really can and will come from NARJA. I guess you could also treat Beryl as a bit of more like a support with the with the draw. And then on the left side, you really just have this like damage / hyper carry setup, right? Units that I'm really excited to actually try in the future and also would recommend for you to try out is going to be, for example, a NARJA Veronica plus either a Rin or a Charon, because they would just work really well together, right? Like, NARJA can generate an incredible amount of AP value by just reducing the cost with the Veracity damage bonus, which could help you play out these futilities in Charon's basics to turn them into futilities, or Charon's standard cards to generate the futilities, because these futilities, they do cost 1, and with the help of NARJA, you could reduce those to 0, allowing you a massive amount of freedom in terms of Charon deck building. And also Charon has a bunch of big hits, so you don't even need that many Veracity or Predation stacks to truly get the most out of her buffing for Charon. So NARJA Charon should be on your visor, on your radar. The same is also true for NARJA Rin. NARJA Rin, especially in the when you move an attack card to hand, gain 1 predation, or also in the cost reduction department, could be a match made in heaven. As I already briefly mentioned earlier in the Epiphany section, you have the ability to play 2 1-cost cards on Rin and then move them back into your hand and play them again and potentially move them back into your hand, where then you would be able to reduce those, right? Reduce the cost of these cards by 1, by 2, saving you massive amounts of AP and allowing you to properly play out that combo without without having to rely on like too many other variables, as well as also further you have a really good consumer of these stacks, or even a utilizer of NARJA's many skill cards, in that NARJA skill cards can just chill and you can just buff Rins up to 6 hitter with the amount of skill cards, or even just with obviously the Veracity and Predation stacks. So those are the ones you should really be on the lookout for. But if it comes to like damage or raw damage output, or just playing something broken, you could also just play NARJA, Serenial, and Cassius. Same is also true for like the general like basic setup, where it would just be NARJA Ray and Mei Lin, or NARJA Ray and Shizuru. So that is, I hope, a broader impression. But what you would have noticed at this point is, where's Renoa, where's Hugo, and where is Tressa? So one of the reasons why I don't think that NARJA and Hugo will really work that well together is because NARJA doesn't really have a way to boost Hugo's follow-up damage, due to Hugo's follow-up damage not being related to attack cards. And the same is also true for Tressa, where Tressa mainly benefits from her just spamming out her cards and you healing to generate more through the Shadow Reload, at least as of this moment. You really don't have that much healing going on a NARJA. You have 1 of the basics, or I guess if you keep 2 basics in, you have 2 here, there, and then you could potentially get yourself another heal from... no, it wouldn't even work, right? Because it needs to be skill cards that heal you. So that's why that's kind of limited. And also, she doesn't really need the boost. She mainly does her damage through dot. Where then also, the last one that's missing here is Renoa. And that is due to Renoa's bullets not being able to benefit from Veracity or Predation stacks if they are getting discard activated. So where, for example, a Veronica can use the stacks and also heal you through that, Renoa for some reason is once again excluded, in the same way she also couldn't generate stacks for Shizuru. So that's the teams. So now that you are a NARJA expert and you want to get into farming, the question is how and what are you looking for, especially also where. The current only way for you to farm SaveData reliably, unless you want to waste your time, is through the Zero system. For some of you, you might have noticed we have a Laboratory Zero here, and that is, yes, in fact, Laboratory Zero has been moved into the Zero system and you can roll it like any other planet. What is also important here as a base for you to understand is, if you play a planet, and you beat the planet, you're guaranteed to get 3 of the same planet after again, meaning you can find a planet once and then play planet after planet after planet of the same. So that is that as well. Now, what are like the main regions, right? So if you are very interested in building like the peak deck, the extent of SaveData capacity, the multi 4-copy divine deck, then you will have to make your way into Laboratory 0 or the Passion Planet Blue Pot, because otherwise you just won't have access to a card removal, free card removal event like the Mutant Sample or the Meat Sample, I'm just gonna call it, which would be the Blue Pot equivalent. So if you're just looking for that 4-copy Ultra Divine deck, you don't have a choice between Lab 0 and the other one, and the Blue Pot, right? And also Laboratory 0, though I'd probably recommend a bit more, because you find a bunch of good gear that could be useful there, as well as also you should still be able to find the the hidden boss. So that's Laboratory 0. Now, out of the other planets, out of the standard planets, which would be my favorite, because you should not really be playing Laboratory 0 if you just want a multi-copy deck. What you should be playing instead is the standard planets with the pretty much 100% guarantee to find the copy event, so that you can at minimum get 2 copies, and then more realistically 2 or even 3, so long as you don't get entirely unlucky on the boss or you didn't buy too many neutral cards, whatever. So my personal favorite planet for her has to be Twin Stars Shadow. You are absolutely domineering on Twin Stars Shadow, paired it up with a Serenial, smack in like a Veronica or a Caleb, and you're blasting through this. You're having the time of your life, you are type effective as hell, and you also have a bunch of useful gear. Now, for us to properly go over the gear, we actually have to make our way into the Chaos, onto the Chaos Manifestation, just so I can properly show it through you through the exploration. So the main chase pieces in terms of gear here are going to be, for example, the AoE damage amount increaser, due to all or most of her cards being related to AoE. So depending on how many enemies you're facing, you can get yourself guaranteed a 10% bonus to AoE attacks, as well as also a +7 per target. You could also get value out of the 1 or less by 25%, due to most of her attack cards not being that expensive. So this could be a really good multiplier. Keep in mind, if a card has a high base multiplier, a multiplier like this is actually quite big. Then we also have the perfect piece to just run alongside El Serenial, giving you 30% damage amount to Ravage targets. A absolutely solid piece on legit any DPS in the game that you can reliably get. These 2 pieces you can reliably get from the boss of these of this planet right here, and that is just +20% crit damage. Easy. You just get +20% crit damage. We don't have to talk about it anymore. And those are kind of like, those are like kind of the 3 highlights. I guess Formica's Perfect Spear as well. And that's pretty much it for the planet here itself. Whereas then, let us quickly once more just hop back. So we get the 8. I mean, if you've played Lab 0 through any duration of Season 1, you should still remember this. But let's just do a brief refresher. So cards that could be good for her, if you do go the Lab 0 route, are going to be the shield gain amount and damage amount increase if you gain yourself a forbidden card. As well as then also potentially something like a shield as a chess piece. But those aren't obviously super desirable. Nobody you're really looking for is either this one, if you do find yourself with a draw divine or draw from outside, but more specifically this 30% damage bonus, so long as you have 4 more cards, which shouldn't be that hard to maintain or obtain. As well as also something like, in terms of just raw damage boosting, the Wings of Freedom kit, if you do encounter it, giving you up to 30% damage amount. Important, it's damage amount, so it works for both attack and defense based characters, or even just something solid like 1 draw 1 damage reduction, with then either Amorphous Cube, our +25 damage bonus, or the Emblem of an Exemption Entity, the +30% damage bonus, being kind of like the items you're looking for. Where then you could also, for example, find yourself the Fragment of the Empty Void with the 3 draw right there. And that's kind of about most of the things you're looking for. Otherwise, it's Cthulhu gear, right? Otherwise, the things you could be looking for from Cthulhu are the biggest damage bonus chest piece in the game for Serenial, and it's going to be the plus 12% Shell of Aberration chest, or the support chest with the 8% damage bonus team-wide, or even the 18% attack gun, though then again, attack as a stat for defense-based damage is only a 7th as effective as defense, right? So yeah, the Shell of Aberration is definitely something you could be on the lookout for, because it did feel a bit more useless before getting that one, but on her it's actually quite a bit of a banger. Then we have ourselves the Obsidian Sword, just for the general damage increase if you don't have anything better, and the plus 25% damage increase from Amorphous Cube, which is just a solid pickup if you don't know how to fill out that ring slot. So yeah, that is pretty much that for the most part, whereas then again, otherwise, all the other planets are absolutely fine. You're going to be able to find success on Blue Pot, City of Mist, Swamp of Judgment, or Foretold Ruins. All of them have a bit of their cons and demerits, but I'd highly recommend Twin Star Shadow. I did play 4 or 5 rounds of it today there already. And yeah, so that is pretty much that. Then let's just quickly have a look at the usual, right? The usual question. Okay, but which of my fancy forbidden cards do I put on her? And forbidden card wise, Eternal Hunger is always a no-brainer, especially if you run somebody to like put that thing back into the deck or discard it and then redraw it. Gesture of Freedom, hey, nobody ever said anything bad about even more potential AP value, especially for cards that you're using multiple times a turn. Forbidden Disposable Ego can have some really good interactions with her due to her having some a bit more costly cards, especially if you can draw into a Mealtime before you cost reduce it, allowing you to potentially do a 7 draw for just 1 cost. So that's where Forbidden Disposable Ego comes in. But the most solid choice is going to be Portrait of Fury. Good damage, good hits, can consume stacks, can heal you, and more importantly, can give you up to 3 draw. As well as then, if it's available, but there's nothing better than the Forbidden Ecstasy of Violence to lean even more into that DPS side of her could work as well, where then the Engraved Malice and Guidance of Futility are a bit more of the like unwanted stepchilds, because as good as this card is in value, it is just a little too random, because there will always be scenarios where you don't necessarily want to activate cards in a certain order. So yes, but no, unless you obviously have a very safe deck in terms of what it could activate, and that there's no way for this to like fail you. So then, as this last part of the video, let's talk about the SaveData customization revolution, if you haven't heard about it yet. And that is, you can give it a favorite, and then you can now use the same sticker multiple times, as well as you can also flip it. You can flip stickers, so absolutely amazing, big W by the devs, and then you can create stickers like this if you feel like it. But no, what I actually wanted to talk about is I wanted to show you my favorite deck that I was able to get on this day 1, and that is, we have ourselves a Shackles of Hunger with the neutral Epiphany for gaining 2 morale, as well as the 4 Veracity attunement twice, meaning that if we play this out twice in a singular turn, that is 4 morale right there. We also have the Bottomless Hunger, where I was lucky enough to get a 1 morale neutral and a 1 draw divine Epiphany. I was able to copy it twice, even copy it twice, but then due to SaveData limitations, they took away my divine. But that is honestly, at the end of the day, fine enough. Here we then have the Veracity plus Predation generation based on running it with like a Maelin, like a Serenial, and characters like that, as well as also the, you could say, best and slot increased Tenacity damage taken plus Veracity, as well as then also a Forbidden Disposable Ego. And then just as like the cherry on top, we found ourselves the crit damage weapon, and then just a pretty chill Amorphous Cube. So that is pretty much my favorite there. Definitely my favorite day 1. And I did try out a bit more of like a meme Mealtime build. You can see here we went for the unique Mealtime, double for the 0 cost 7 Veracity lead Mealtime. I was able to push this in, I think it was 2 turns, up to like 6,480%. So there's definitely something there. It's just, I guess, getting a bit held back by the fact that it's AoE damage, and most of the time you really don't need an outrageous amount of AoE damage. But what you can really do here is, there is no limit, right? This just means for 1 turn, each veracity you use adds 40% damage amount to the next mealtime. That does not mean you have to play the damage boosted mealtime in that same turn to get the benefit. So you should be able to technically over, let's say, 5 to 10 turns stack up a humongous amount of damage bonus on this mealtime itself. So yeah, that's pretty much been it. As always, it's been a pleasure, and we see each other in the next one. Peace!